I want to come back to matters that concern me, whether in France or Switzerland, everything relating to the legal question. The accusations that were brought against me, and which for now, over 7 years, have troubled my life, made sure that it was somehow connected, initially by prison and today by legal issues. So, I would like to start at the beginning and stick to the facts. Once again, just the facts, and what the record reveals in a certain way. Before getting down to business, there is one thing that is particularly important that must be said and remembered. For 40 years, I have been appearing on the Western scene, whether in France or in the French-speaking world, and more widely in the West, in the English-speaking world. I always said, always repeated, that I knew I disturbed, and that I knew who I was disturbing. Firstly, because I have positions. I have always had positions that were politically outspoken. I decided very young, in continuing my commitment, to never remain silent in the face of injustices by states, whether Western states or predominantly Muslim ones, which meant that at one point I was actually banned for a while from entering France, the United States, and in 9 majority Muslim countries in the same way, whether it was Saudi Arabia, Mauritania, Algeria, Syria, Tunisia, etc. And still today this is the case. So, these positions, I knew they were discomforting, and I knew I was targeted. I was informed of this several times, particularly in France, a year before the affair hit. We know in particular that the United Arab Emirates paid a Swiss company with the determined objective of destroying the reputations of a certain number of Muslim scholars and individuals, Muslims from the Western scene. This is factual. The meeting took place in August 2017, and today we have the proof that this state was involved. Therefore, all of this was the hidden background of this matter, which is particularly important and must be remembered. Afterward, they wanted to disqualify my statement when I spoke of a trap and when I spoke about international relations. But today, it is clear that these are not empty words. They are proven. A complaint was registered today in Switzerland by a Belgian minister, by myself, and by many other individuals. The Swiss government took it very, very seriously since today this Geneva company has been attacked, and it is recognized that it has worked for a foreign state. And this is exactly the same year as the beginning of this case. To begin with, we must remember this, because all of this is the political background. I knew, and even the population internationally, have always asked themselves the question, saying, it's still all an astonishing fact that this affair targets him in this way on a legal level, while what they wanted was to prevent me from expressing myself politically. That's the first plan. The way things were presented immediately was that finally, it had to be an international affair. There would be complaints in the United States. There would be complaints across the world. And eventually, according to the investigations, all of this disappeared. There are no complaints in the United States, contrary to what the French newspapers said, implying that it was not just a French affair. There were no other complaints anywhere else in the world, except that after the first complaints in France, there was a complaint in Switzerland. And we quickly wanted to say, in France, well, it was not just France, it was also Switzerland. Except what we failed to say, by presenting things in this way, is that the people knew each other. The complainant in Switzerland is in contact with 3 of the French complainants. The second plaintiff's lawyer went to Switzerland to invite the Swiss plaintiff to get involved. The searches conducted in Switzerland showed that Caroline Forrest, who was very active in the French case, had made contact and knew, contrary to what she said on television, the complainant in Switzerland. They were in contact since there were emails exchanged in 2009. They already knew each other, and one announces the complaint of the other, as if behind the scenes they knew each other. They announced each other's actions. This is something that must be called out in a certain way. When we are victims of rape, we go to the police, file a complaint, and do things in order. We don't spend our time on the internet advertising to announce the complaint of another, exchanging emails about taking down a public figure. And more than that, to lie even before the judges and say, we don't know each other. That's a first element. The second element, which comes from this situation and which is still troubling throughout the file, is to see the profile today and even the Attorney General. He had removed 3 complaints out of 4, and he was holding Christelle back, the second complainant, and he held her saying, we have to go. There are elements like this that might be more disturbing than others or, in any case, subject to further investigations during the trial. Once again, when you see the facts, when you observe what you find in the file, Christelle's profile is unique. It is a person who, ideologically, is not only close to the far right, but she also managed National Front websites, had relations with Marine Le Pen, and held positions that are Hitlerian. Two things stand out. On one side, as seen in traditional far-right movements, there is proven anti-Semitism, but also Islamophobia and anti-Arab racism. And from this point of view, it is in relation to me, what I could represent in relation to Islam, and even compared to what is happening today in the Middle East. From this perspective, we are facing something completely unique, characterized racism, and at the same time, a position in relation to Arabs, to Islam, and to what is happening in the Middle East that is absolutely unacceptable. We also see around them a group of lawyers who hold these positions. It's the same lawyers. It turns out that Christelle has the same lawyers as Munya, the third complainant. They changed lawyers and collaborated together with different profiles but with the same enemy. Ultimately, it's this figure that I represent, someone who, in a certain way, for the racist and the Islamophobe, Islam is the problem, and the one who defends the rights of the oppressed, of victims in Africa, in Palestine and elsewhere, is also the enemy. In other words, we see here that this profile of Christelle is never highlighted. Yet a journalist highlighted all of this. She filed a complaint and she lost, confirming the true face of this complainant: extremist far-right positions, a proven anti-Semite and an Islamophobe, with positions on the Middle East that are about denying victims and supporting the worst. To destroy me, they would support the worst. One can ask, what about your political ethics? To destroy a man, you would agree to support the worst, because deep down, Christelle is not a victim of rape. She is the instrument of a political campaign, and that's what this is about, and that is what the file proves. It's only one matter between two borders, of course, but with the same actors, and not only Caroline Forrest, but also the French-Israeli paparazzi El Fassi is in contact with all the complainants. All, without exception, know him, and he himself says, "It's thanks to me that Tariq Ramadan went to prison." So, what was supposed to be an international affair, coming from all sides, finds its center in France. And this expression, beyond France in Geneva, involves people who know each other, and who know each other so well that, finally, we realize that they were in communication 8 years before the first complaint was filed. They communicated on social media, by email, and all of this today is factually proven. The search that took place in Switzerland, at the home of one of the witnesses, highlighted this reality. More than that, it was revealed that one of the witnesses falsified emails that she gave to the police, removing, for example, in one of the emails, "You know he's not a rapist," and this was removed to suggest something else. From this perspective, the first part is not about accusing me of rape, but rather about destroying my reputation on a much broader level, especially on a moral level. The second thing we can say about the fact that it's all part of the same file is the way things were handled between France and Switzerland. We start with complaints that are filed in France, and an investigation is done in France. I found myself in prison, and as I was in prison, a complaint was filed in Switzerland. It was filed in Switzerland in April. Once again, as I told you, people know each other, but the pace with which the cases are handled is astonishing. It's as if France relies on Switzerland, and Switzerland is keeping pace with France to carry on the cases. The French investigation concerns 3 complainants initially, while the Swiss investigation only 1. Yet it will take exactly the same amount of time, with hearings, reports, and an evolution that goes hand in hand. The Swiss complainant and I will face each other in Paris, with judges from Paris who will ask the questions, with the silence of the Swiss prosecutor who will follow since I cannot go to Switzerland. France holds the file. Not content with not asking questions in Paris, Switzerland still asks, through a rogatory commission, for the entirety of the French file to know what it contains and to be able to rely on the French investigations, if applicable, to carry out the investigation in Geneva. What France does is select excerpts from the French file, highlighting what might be of interest according to the French, but without ever presenting the exculpatory evidence. In other words, only a few facts are reported, none of the realities of their lives, none of their activities on the internet. Everything that could prove my innocence proven in the French file is not included, nor is it sent to the Swiss. And Switzerland doesn't insist on receiving it, even though it was their right to obtain the complete file with all the elements. This means that the entire file is full of exculpatory evidence, lacking any incriminating facts. It's not over. At the time when I was initially acquitted in Switzerland, we had the appeal. There was a phone call from the Attorney General in France, who asked my French lawyer when the trial would take place in Switzerland, as if they had to ensure that things were connected. The verdict from the Court of Appeal was signed in Switzerland on August 28th, and on August 29th, the French judges set the date for cassation. It seems as though the two jurisdictions, which should be independent and conducting their investigations separately, are coordinating. It's as if what the law requires, the autonomy of the law in relation to the state, and the autonomy of rights in the two countries in question, has been overridden by politics. Things are handled together. This highlights, on a factual level, that this is not a legal matter, but a politically managed and undoubtedly politically decided issue.